right, is everybody seated?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, good, thank you. Mr. Mills, good afternoon. Could you introduce yourself, tell us your name and DOC number, please?
How you doing? My name is Wayne Mills, 3354.
All right, and let me acknowledge the folks who are joining us today. We have the Parole Project in support. We also have, I'm going to read the list of those folks who are there with you. Ryan Williams, Annalisa Williams, Katie Williams, Roberta Rivers, Ingrid Williams, Wayne Benjamin, Christian Rice, Stanford Williams, all are who are in support, and Ryan Williams will be speaking on your behalf. We'll call on him at the appropriate time. We'll also hear from the Parole Project. Here with us in Baton Rouge in opposition, we have Elisa Thompson and Lupina Thompson, both who will be speaking on behalf of the victim, and we'll call on them to do so at the appropriate time. First, I'll just read some identifying information into the record, then I'll turn it over to Mrs. Jackson. Your case has been assigned to her this afternoon. So, Mr. Wayne Mills, your DOC number is 3354. You're here seeking a commutation of your sentence. You were sentenced in November 2002 in the 24th Judicial District, Jefferson Parish, for second-degree murder and obstruction of justice, and you're currently serving a life sentence. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Would you answer Mrs. Jackson's questions, please?
Good afternoon, Mr. Mills.
Good afternoon.
How old are you?
I'm 48.
And how long have you been incarcerated on this charge?
23 years now.
So you were 25 when this offense occurred?
I was actually 24, ma'am.
Tell us what happened.
Ms. Jackson, on September 17, 1999, I killed Mr. George Thompson.
Well, that's kind of not in dispute. I just want you to kind of recount how this happened. What was going on? Why were you and Mr. Mills, I'm sorry, the victim in an argument? I didn't end up with guns being involved and the victim losing his life. I always don't.
Yeah. Well, it occurred at a studio that was owned by Mr. Thompson. And 3 days prior to me killing Mr. Thompson, we had got into a verbal altercation.
About?
And
about?
Ma'am?
About what?
It was about the answering machine. I made a comment about the answering machine, not knowing that it was his voice on there. Okay. And he got upset. And we kind of started exchanging words. And two other guys that were there intervened in between us and stopped the altercation from escalating. So I left, and I was asked to come back 3 days later to the studio because we were having a concert to open as the official opening of the label, the record label.
Who asked you to come back?
It was Stanley Tovall and Alfred. I think his name was Kevin Alfred.
And what was their connection with the studio?
Okay. Stanley Tovall was supposed to be part owner of the studio, and Kevin Alfred was one of the producers there.
All right, so you, after the disagreement with Mr. Thompson, someone else associated with the studio asked you to come back to record something. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And was Mr. Thompson there when you got there?
No, ma'am, he was not.
At what point did he arrive?
It was later in the night, probably maybe a couple of hours after we were there.
So what happened when he got there?
But when he got there, I was in one of the adjoining rooms with the light on, with the light off, and he opened the door and directly told me, get off the phone and get out of his studio. And we ensued into an argument again. And one of the guys who were with me came to pull me away from it because another altercation was taking place on the stairwell. So I go to the stairwell to see what that was about.
Who was fighting on the stairwell? Why was there an altercation on the stairwell?
One of the guys that were with me retrieved a gun out of my vehicle and was re-entering the studio. And he had made it to the stairs, up the stairs, and him and Kevin Alfred were wrestling, not wrestling really, but tussling over the gun on the stairwell. I took the gun out of his hand and was placing it in my waistband as I turned to go back into the studio to tell him.
Why would you turn and go back into the studio?
Because
given that was going on, why would you go back to the studio? Why didn't you just leave?
Man, I wanted to get my vocals and all the music that I recorded while I was there, and the guy that was with me there erased from their stuff, because that was going to be it. It wasn't going to be any more dealings between us. That's how I wanted it to go, but it didn't work out that way.
So what happened when you re-entered the studio?
When I turned to go back in, a shot was fired.
Something happened before a shot was fired.
No, ma'am. Well, when I went back in, I was placing the gun in my pants. Shot was fired. I seen him coming towards me. I pulled the gun back and fired in self-defense. And we actually got into an actual altercation between both of us, wrestling. I actually ended up shooting him in his neck in the altercation. We were still wrestling. And I ended up shooting him in his head as well. And when he went down to the ground, I picked up his weapon as well as mine and exited the studio. Ma'am?
Why did you take the two weapons? Why did you take his weapon?
Well, the studio, when you get to the stairwell, there's a light at the bottom of the stairwell and a light at the top. But midway down, you can't see anything. I was scared. I don't know if anybody was waiting for me down there or anything. So I wanted to try to have something to defend myself to get out there.
What about the gun you shot Mr. Thompson with? You have that?
Yes, ma'am.
So why did you take Mr. Thompson's gun? That's what I'm asking you.
Yes, ma'am. What I'm trying to convey is that I don't know if it was going to be one person waiting for me or more than one person waiting for me at the bottom of the stairwell. The gun that I had was a .380, and it had 7 bullets in it, which I think I used 2 up there, 2 or 3 up there. And I just wanted to make sure that I had enough to try to defend myself.
And after you left the studio, what happened?
Well, I fled. I left the state and I left the country. I left and went to Mexico.
And how long were you in Mexico?
Almost a year.
And then you were stopped at the San Diego border on June 30th of 2000 as you attempted to re-enter the United States, and you were arrested. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Have you been incarcerated since June 30th of 2000?
Yes, ma'am.
So other than being an recording artist, what else were you doing at age 24?
Ma'am, could you repeat that?
Said you apparently were some sort of recording artist.
Yes, ma'am.
What else did you do besides that?
Well, at the time I was working as a valet parker at a hotel called the French Quarter Courtyard Inn, part-time, because I had recently lost my job at Trinity Marines in Brule, Louisiana, because I didn't have a vehicle to actually get out there at the time, back and forth to work.
You're classified as a third offender. You had a prior conviction for possession of a stolen automobile.
Yes, ma'am.
Tell me about that.
Well, that was just me being young and dumb, wanted to do things that I had no business doing. Joyriding. A friend of mine was like, man, let's go get a car. And we went and got a car, and I knew better, but I guess I wasn't really thinking. I wasn't in the right frame of mind.
Did you get probation or did you get a straight jail time?
I had received a jail sentence, ma'am.
Okay, and you made parole, and then that parole was revoked. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Why'd your parole get revoked?
Well, it got revoked for another possession. Ma'am, it was possession of another vehicle.
Well, actually, what happened is you were revoked in 1995. You paroled in 1996, and you were revoked again in 1997. And that was because you had a new conviction for possession of a vehicle.
Yes, ma'am.
So before you got revoked for the new charge, you got revoked initially. And I'm asking you, why did you get revoked initially?
I'm sorry, ma'am. I misunderstood. I was in my mother's vehicle, and she had a firearm in there, and the charges were dismissed for the firearm, but because I sat in the parish prison for more than 30 days, I had to go before a revocation hearing. And in a revocation hearing, they said that I should have knew that my mother had a weapon in the car. So they revoked me.
You have opposition, obviously, from the victim's family, the Jefferson Parish DA, and the Jefferson Parish Sheriff's Office. There's nothing you can do about the opposition, but you need to be aware that there is opposition. So let's talk about the last 23 years. How have you spent your time in prison?
Trying to better myself.
In what ways?
Getting as many skills as I can to sustain myself when I go home, taking certain classes, trying to better myself and change my frame of mind, change my way of thinking.
Tell us about some of the classes or the ways that you've tried to better yourself.
Well, I took Thinking for a Change, substance abuse, anger management, effective verbal communication, non-verbal communication, and I think I have another one, but I also attend church now. And I tried to get into Ashland College that they have up here, but I was accepted to get into it. But when it came time to pass out the books, I was refused because I had a life sentence. They didn't want anybody that had over 10 years to get into the college. They wanted to try to help people that were on their way home.
You've had 11 write-ups in the last 23 years. You had a fighting write-up in 2018. What was that about?
I'm still confused about that one, ma'am. A guy hit me and I defended myself. And we were both put in on lockdown, and I was moved to the main prison from Camp D. I really don't know what.
Were you in lockdown?
Ma'am?
How long were you in lockdown?
It probably was about 3-4 days before I went to court, and they transferred me to the main prison.
And you were found guilty?
Yes, ma'am.
I also noticed that between 2011 and 2017, you had 4 write-ups for contraband. Tell us about that. What kind of contraband?
All right. Well, the first one I know of was a table saw that I had. At the time, they were picking the table saws up from the hobby shop. And the job that I worked didn't permit me to be in the daytime because we left early. I was on 15A at the time. So they went through the hobby shop trying to see if everybody turned in their saws. And mine was still in there and it had my name on it. So I was written up for that. And one was for a cell phone and another one was for a cell phone. The fourth one I'm unsure of, man.
Trying to find here. I'll give you the date. Okay. On July 14th of 11, you had a contraband. On April the 9th of 13, you had an aggravated disobedience and a contraband. On July 14th, 2016, you had contraband. And on November 5th, 2017, you had a contraband. Do you remember getting a contraband along with an aggravated disobedience in 2013?
If I'm not mistaken, I think that was the one with the table saw. I think the aggravated disobedience was for me not bringing the table saw to him. But the one from 16 and 17, I do remember those two, man. Those were two, those were cell phone incidences.
I see that you took substance abuse. So tell us about your substance abuse issues.
Well, I never actually had a drug problem, man, but I did drink. You know, I drank a lot, not enough to possibly consider myself an alcoholic, but to try to keep myself from becoming that way, I decided to take the class because I really don't want to have the desire to drink anymore.
Well, how much were you drinking?
I say probably within a week, maybe a case of beer and maybe a fifth of Jack Daniels.
And you don't think that was enough to consider yourself an alcoholic? That's a lot of consumption.
Yes, ma'am. And in retrospect, yes, I can see it as that.
And what did you learn from your substance abuse programming?
Well, I learned that I can't hide behind alcohol. It's not, no matter how much I drink, my problem is still going to be there. I have to find a positive solution to it, a sober solution to it, because within this drinking, it can cause me to make bad decisions, and bad decisions lead to real consequences, real repercussions, and it not only affects me, it affects those that support me, that love me, that care for me, and the people around me as well. And I don't believe that my bad decisions should affect anybody else. I need to make better decisions.
I see that you've been a nursing aide. Tell us about that.
Yes, ma'am. I don't know how long ago it was, but I worked in Ash 2, which was a healthcare dome, separate from the hospital, but part of the hospital. And I worked with the patients in there to help them, the ones who couldn't do for themselves, the ones that needed help doing things for themselves, such as picking up boxes, helping them to the shower, in the shower, out the shower. Some of them I had to help shower. Some of them I had to help, change their linen, their underwear, their Pampers. I hate to say it like that, but with those guys, I had to quit eventually because it started taking a toll on me. Getting close to them, start off not knowing them, and you get close to them because you're constantly with them. Days I didn't work, I still would stop in and check on them, even after I quit. But eventually, some of them go to dying. Some of them go to getting real bad. And it's not the doctor's fault. It's not their fault. It's just the progression of the diseases that they have. And watching them fall off by dying, it kind of hurts, because you can't do nothing for them. You can only try to comfort them for the time that you have with them. And that hurt. I couldn't take it no more, so I had to leave.
Let's talk about that hurt, and then let's transfer that hurt from you to the victim's family.
Yes, ma'am.
What would you have not taken victim awareness?
I'm currently, I didn't mean to cut you off, ma'am. I'm currently in victim awareness. I just started last week. I've been on backlog for a while, and it takes time to get into these classes up here. But I am in victims awareness now, ma'am.
Well, even without having completed victim awareness, talk to me about how you feel your crime has affected Mr. Thompson's family and people that love him as well.
Well, I do understand that what I did, I can never erase. It's no amount of apologizing or trying to make amends for it, because I can't make amends for it. I can't give him the life back that I took from him. I can't replace this loved one that they had, that they no longer have. I live with this every day, that I took somebody's life, and I didn't want to. I didn't actually mean to, but it was something that happened. I don't blame him because it wasn't his fault. It was my fault because I should have did what I look at now as walking away, just walk away, leave. All that stuff that I said I wanted to go back and make them erase, that's just what it was, stuff. It's tangible goods that doesn't matter. Then I thought it did. It doesn't. But to his family, I can't express enough of how sorry I am to him, because I know my family can see me. They can come visit me, you know. When I could take pictures, I could send to them, but their family member can't. Mr. Thompson can't do that. He didn't get a chance to see his family or his kids grow up. I didn't get a chance to see mine. I'm not saying that my hurt is equal to theirs, because they actually lost a loved one. I mean, I go to sleep at 3 o'clock at night. Not because I'm working or anything. It's because I can't. It's like I have this cloud just hovering over me, and it haunts me. I don't know how to explain it, but it's something I'll never live down. Every time I look at my mom, I see, and I don't know, I didn't know his family. I didn't know him actually before this incident. So I don't really know how to go about telling them I'm sorry, because like I said, I don't know them. I never had the opportunity to speak to them.
Warden, what can you tell us about Mr. Mills?
I can tell you that Mr. Mill is a Class A trustee. He also is a member of the outside work crew. He did some work at LCIW. Also, he was being truthful about the reports with the cell phone. One of them was for a set of car speakers that he had that wasn't mentioned, but the table saw and the cell phones were true. And the last one for the fistic encounter was true. He have taken T4C. He doesn't have a GED. That's it.
Mr. Johnson, that's all I have.
Thank you. I don't see any other questions, so we'll hear from those who are in support. Could we hear from Ryan Williams, please?
You can sit right there and talk. They can hear you. You don't have to stand up.
Yes.
Go ahead. What would you like us to know?
Over the years, my cousin's been, I've noticed a change vastly of him understanding what happened in this incident. Much more maturity, much more willingness to be a citizen and come out and have that second chance of showing out and come what he can do. I'm currently working to have a business that he could help me out a lot with. I put an offer in a place to stay. So, he's my cousin, known him for all my life. Grew up with him for the most part of my younger years. He was there for me, taught me one of my favorite sports, BMX, and just always been a great member of the family. And I know he just has so much more to offer.
Well, thank you. We appreciate your input. We hear from the Parole Project.
Yes, good afternoon. Kerry Myers with Louisiana Parole Project. We're here to offer, I can tell you for a couple of reasons, we're here to offer Mr. Mills our full support. One, I think it's just he's demonstrated his sincerity, and two, his maturity. We believe that after speaking with Mr. Mills, looking at the totality of his accomplishments, he's a Class A trustee, he's a tractor driver. He's got a lot of trust. He has taken anger management. He has taken victim awareness. He's completed AA 12 steps. He's CPR certified. I believe that he has done many of the things that has shown him to be mature. The difference between the 48-year-old Mr. Mills and the 24-year-old Mr. Mills is evident. His remorse is also evident. and we just believe he would be an excellent client. He has a long-term housing plan. Parole Project is here to help him through his transition. We'd ask this board just to grant him his recommendation today.
Thank you. We'll hear from the opposition. I'll let you ladies decide who wants to go first. And just introduce yourself and tell us your relationship to the center.
My name is Keith Williams.
I'm sorry, we're listening to the folks here in Baton Rouge with us. Go ahead, ma'am.
Good afternoon. My name is Tina Robinson Thompson. Joyce Thompson Fields. Today, Mr. Mills says that he did not want George Thompson. He did know his name. He's not. So thank you. Appreciate you for allowing me to introduce you to George Thompson Sr. I met him when I was 15 years old. My high school sweetheart. We left and went to college together. We were safe. We came home. We went to college together. When George was killed, he was actually in school at Tulane University. We had 3 businesses together that we had begun our life together. 1991, we married. In 1993, we had our son, who at 6 years old stood at his father's funeral and asked the question, what did I do that I no longer have a dad? So he's right. My son grew up without a father, and to this day, it haunts him. My life has been changed forever. I saw Mr. Mills in court. I've never seen him before, and today it brings back such memories to have to see him again on TV. I see his mother's face when I would go in church. She didn't know me, but I would see her and I would pray for her because I was praying for my mother and my mother-in-law who lost their son. And although my mother-in-law lived years after this, her quality of life was ridiculous. I still cry. I don't make excuses about how I feel. I still wear his ring because he's still my husband. September 17th, 1999, about my mother's transition since, but that was the worst day of my life. 4 days later, I was at a funeral parlor making plans for his funeral, which was his birthday. So for the first time since we were 15, I had not celebrated a birthday with George. Yes, it hurts. And to some, time has passed. Time has passed. But this has not left me. I've tried to explain to my child for years that things happen in life does nothing. But when I tried to explain to him the things that happen in life that's not right, I'm not believing that myself because it hurts. If this is not how our lives were supposed to be, it's not how it was supposed to end. I'm telling my child one thing, but God knows I'm feeling another. And I know what it is for a family to hurt because we have heard for so long. I've heard the story. It's had been different from how he explained it today, but okay, that's his version and that's his today's version. Because even the person who's not present today, who we called his friend after playing such a murder and making sure that it happened to suffer in that hallway that he talks about. That hallway hurts me because I know and I saw and heard from sitting in court on 3 different occasions how he fought to get that gun in his hand to return back into that room to take George's life. He said that he shot him in the neck, and then he said, and when the judge asked the question, you shot him in the neck, why did you need to still shoot him in the head? And his comment was, I knew I needed to kill him because I was afraid he would come.
Thompson. I know this is an emotional time. Can you try to wrap it up for us?
Say, everybody's lives have been changed. But I don't think it's fair because time has changed and has that a life sentence today should not be a life sentence because of the things he's been able to accomplish behind bars. Because time has not changed the page I have. Thank you for that.
Yes, thank you. Lisa?
Lisa Thompson. I'm George's oldest sister, or only sister. And as Lupine said, Mr. Mills doesn't know George. My brother was someone who was caring, who had a big heart, who was for the underdog. He actually started the studio to try to help young men, who was going in the wrong direction. My problem with this whole process, if you will, we hear because Mr. Mills wants an opportunity to live his life. We are left with a life sentence. Our life sentence does not change. And he made that choice when he walked out of the studio and went back into the studio and shot my brother. And contrary to his storytelling, he walked in the studio, he went back to the studio with intent on killing my brother because he asked him not to come to the studio. No one had the authority to ask Mr. Mills to come back to the studio because my brother and myself were the owners of said record label. So for me, I lost my brother, I lost my best friend, I watched my sister-in-law and my nephew struggle. I watched my mom life change because it was her baby. And as he said, he doesn't know us, but he made a decision for us to be here. And I plead with you guys that y'all would not allow him to have the opportunity to go and do something that my brother did not have a chance to do. And that is live his life. He had a right to ask him not to be in the studio. And Mr. Mills decided he wanted to do something other than honor what was asked of him, and that was just to leave. I tried very hard not to have hate in my heart towards him because God tells me that I'm supposed to forgive. But I promise you, it has been the hardest thing that I've ever had to do, watching my family suffer, me suffer, because his dream was to help people, and him wanting to help people cost him his life. And for that, I asked that Mr. Mills not be released. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. I'd like to ask Mr. Mills, is there a brief statement you'd like to make to the board before we vote?
I could basically say that I do understand how the family feels. And like I said, there's no amount of apologizing I can do that'll change their mind. Only God can change theirs, you know, and possibly grant them the opportunity to forgive me. Took somebody's life, their loved one's life, and I'll never be able to give it back to them. I just ask the board that they see that I have made a considerable, and I'm not finished changing, still in process of changing. I want to be the best that I can be for my family, for their family, you know, for my kid, his kid. I need to be able to prove that I have made this change, that I have made it to the point of being mature enough to make decisions that doesn't cause pain or hurt or suffering to anyone else. That's all I can say. Thank you.
Thank you. We're prepared to vote.
Like, say no.
The motion for executive session.
Second.
And we have a second. Did you do the roll call, please?
Chair Renassa.
Yes.
Bonnie Dixon.
Yes.
Sonny Marion.
Yes.
Steve Green.
Yes.
So we have a unanimous vote to convene an executive session to discuss confidential matters. Stand by, we'll be back shortly. Okay, we are back in regular session and we are prepared to vote, and Mrs. Jackson will be voting first.
First, I'd like to address Mr. Thompson's family. First, I want to tell you that when we take executive session, it's because we want to, it almost be like a jury deliberating. You want to hear what everybody else has to say, because that helps us inform our decisions. I'd like to also thank both of you for being here, because I know this had to be really hard. And I can see just the anguish that both of you are still experiencing. And I want you to know that don't discount that in any way whatsoever. This is a terrible thing to experience. It's a terrible thing to continue to live with. And I know that it's a very hard thing. All of these cases are hard for us. We don't take any of them lightly, because whatever decision we make affects somebody. And so I just want you to know that I appreciate very much what you've gone through, and I appreciate you being here. Our job as a parole board is to take everything that we get into account. We have to hear the victims. We have to look at the offender. We have to judge not only crime, but the crime has already occurred. So what we have to look at is who that person is now, what that person has done over the course of the time that they've been incarcerated. And there's never an equal balance, particularly for the victim. There's never an equal balance. But our job is to look at this individual and determine, is this the same person that committed this crime 23 years ago? Or has this person recognized the harm they caused? And have they grown? Have they matured? Have they done everything that they can do to better themselves? And as I have looked at Mr. Mills's record, he has a good disciplinary history. He has served not only the prison, but he's also served people that he nursed and tended to and took care of. He's done the programming and positive remarks from people that have worked with him in prison. And I truly believe that the Wayne Mills we see today is not the same person that committed this terrible crime against your family. And what I would say to Ms. Eliza Thompson about forgiveness, I tell people all the time, forgiveness is not for the offender. It's for you. And I can tell that you're a person of faith. And what I will also tell you is, yes, in our own human effort, in our own human strength, forgiveness is sometimes impossible. But scripture tells us with God, all things are possible. And that was said in the context of being able to forgive others. And at some point in time, you're going to be held hostage to this the rest of your life if there's no resolution for you to. And if there's no forgiveness that you can find in the future. So my vote today would be to grant commutation with the recommendation to the government to commute the sentence to 99 years. Thank you.
Mr. Mirabella.
Thank you. My vote is the same reasons as Judge Jackson's.
Mr. Freeman.
I concur.
And I do agree based on the record in the interview today. So you've received a unanimous decision, Mr. Mills, to make the recommendation that your sentence be commuted to 99 years. We'll make that recommendation in the behalf.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.